Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. As you can see in the title, today I'm going to be talking about my traumatic birth story. If you hear some birds or any noise in the background, we are close to a kind of forest thing, so just bear with me. If you've been following me for a while, you can probably tell that I haven't posted in a while, and so it's taken me time to process if I really wanted to do this story or not. And I'll talk a little bit later too about why I haven't posted yet. If you are a mom who has gone through a traumatic birth before, I am so sorry that you also went through this, and I really hope and pray that you are looking for the support that you need through this. I know it's not easy, and please reach out to me if you do need any support below, or you can DM me on Instagram. If you are an expecting mom and you happen to run across a story and you're just doing research for yourself, my best advice for you that I can give is to do what you need to do for yourself. Prepare yourself as much as you can. Some things I had during my birth were essential oils and some music, and that really helped. So prepare yourself as much as you can. As you have probably seen, birth may or may not go, the way that you plan. And I feel like, just preparing yourself as much as you can, mentally, spiritually, physically, is everything that we can do, in our power. And so I encourage you to definitely do that, and to have someone that advocates for you and that will support you as you're going through labor, because it is hard to speak as you're in labor. And so whether that's your husband or your doula, whoever it may be, definitely have someone there that will advocate for you and have things that you want written down in case you don't have someone, or if you do have someone and you just need to be reminded. I highly encourage you to do that. Now, I just want to put a disclaimer out there that some of the things I may say may be triggering to some people. So I just want to put that disclaimer out there. I don't mean to laugh, but I said peoples. So just want to put that out there. Okay, so I guess we will get started with my birth story. I started labor at 3 a.m. I knew I was in labor because, like the midwife told me, like, you're gonna know you're in labor pretty much. I just started having cramps down there. It felt completely different than like a period. I just knew I was in labor. I kept using the restroom, TMI, but I just kept having to use a bathroom for some reason. It's just a part of labor. I hear it's normal, so hey. So fast forward, I was in labor between 3 a.m. to 9 a.m. It wasn't that bad. I kept waking up and stuff, but they did advise, if your contractions are like pretty far apart, try your best to sleep, because obviously it's gonna be like a marathon. So I tried my best to sleep between 3 a.m. and 8 a.m. I believe, or 6 a.m. until my husband left, and then again 8 a.m. And I just let my husband know, hey, I'm in labor. I just wanted you to know I'm okay. You try to sleep. If my contractions get closer, then I will let you know. So I ended up being fine until about 9 o'clock. My husband ended up going to work, and I just stayed home laboring, which again, my contractions, we didn't know if it would take the whole day. We didn't know if it would take a few hours until I just told him to go to work. And then my contractions started getting closer and closer, and so I had to call him to come home because they were pretty close. He came, I got my bags, I had some breakfast. A little bit before that, I was in the tub trying to labor. My sister was kind of coaching me through breathing and stuff, and then she noticed, like, hey, your contractions are getting a little bit too close. I think you should call your husband and get to the hospital as soon as possible. So I did that. I did have breakfast. I had some tea. I was hanging out. I called the doctor to see what was going on, and I believe they told me I can take ibuprofen or something. I believe I probably took one just to help me like relax a little bit. And yeah, so my contractions started getting faster, started getting closer. And so my husband came home. We called the doctor. They told me to go into the clinic to check how many centimeters I was dilated, because again, it could take the whole day or it could take just a few hours. We get to the clinic. I am 6 centimeters dilated and my water breaks on the table. And so they call the hospital. At first, I don't believe there were any rooms, which is why they told us to come into the clinic. And so once we were at the clinic, they said, okay, go to the hospital. There was a room that was being set up, got me into the room right away. The labor was progressing and they gave me, I felt a lot of the labor in my lower back. And so they gave me these like little electric things, and that really helped. So that was great. I labored for a few hours. I can't remember exactly. I know we got there around 10, 11 a.m. And then I labored for a few hours. I was on the ball. I was on the bed. The electrical things were helping. There were things that helped. There were things that didn't help. Like, you are just like a completely different person when you're in labor. So, you know, there's like things I did want to hear or didn't want to hear. The midwife came in later on to check me. I think I was still 6 centimeters dilated. So labor wasn't really moving along much. And she suggested like, hey, why don't you go take a shower? Maybe the water would help. For me, that was a big mistake because that meant I had to take off the electrical things on my lower back. And then I was standing in the shower, you know, whereas like being in the tub, let me tell you, being in the tub at home was like amazing. I felt like I could have stayed there the whole time laboring, and it just helped ease my contractions. It just helped birthing go so much better. And I wish I could have just birthed at home, honestly. Since before we even planned on going to the hospital, that was my wish, and I wish the same for the next baby. Got in the shower, and of course all the pressure is coming down, and I just could not even like stand in the shower. It was so painful. And it was like that movie moment where like the woman is screaming at the top of her lungs and she's like, get me the epidural, get me the epidural. I have to share this as part of my story because this is part of my story, and I just find that part like hilarious. And my husband and I were like, wow, what happened to you? What happened to me then? And he said, okay, I'm gonna get the epidural. I'm gonna tell them that that's what you want. And so sure enough, like he had to come in, kind of help me. I had to sit a bit, put the things back on my back. Once I went inside, once I went back to the bed, and the anesthesiologist was probably there within half an hour maybe. And that epidural was like amazing. That I think I told the anesthesiologist, I said, I love you. Like, thank you so much right now. This is amazing. And so labor was still not progressing. So we just hung out in the room. We were able to sleep that night. I don't believe I was able to eat dinner or anything, but you know, labor requires a lot of energy. And so I was sneaking in a couple of snacks here and there because yeah, if you see the more natural birthing videos and stuff, they're like, girl, you need energy, you need to eat, you need to keep yourself like going. I went with that theory. So morning comes, and like here's where things start to get a little bit more serious. So I believe it was about 9 a.m. I slept pretty decently. You know, it's a hospital and the nurses are coming in and out of the room to check your blood pressure, to check your heart rate, to check the baby's heart rate. And so there were interruptions here and there, and I could not get up at all. Obviously I had an epidural. So they came and said, okay, well, we think you're almost ready to push. You're about 10 centimeters dilated, and we're gonna give it like another hour and then we're gonna go. So I was like, all right, let's do this, I'm ready. So in comes the nurse, the birthing nurse, and And at first, you're kind of just pushing. The midwife was there, but I feel like she left us alone with the nurse a few times. Yeah, she left us with the nurse, and she was just kind of monitoring my pushing because I guess it takes a while for the baby to come down the canal. So finally, it was time. The midwife was there. The nurse was there. I think eventually they called in the OBGYN, like after a while, after I was birthing. As I was birthing, the midwife, all I remember was her like going like this. This is a little TMI, but she just kept going, putting her finger around like my pelvic floor, the opening of the vagina. And she just kept saying, like, wow, like your pelvic floor is so tight. Your pelvic floor is so tight. And she just kept kind of like, you know, opening it up. Every time a contraction would come, obviously I would push as much as I could. And she just kept trying to go like that. I think that's when they called the doctor in. And eventually they just told me, look, we're gonna need to cut you open because like your pelvic floor is way too tight. And I was like, on the next push, like, I'm gonna go. I just remember their faces, like, it was like almost like making a decision, and at the same time there was a contraction that was coming, and I was just ready to push that baby out because no, I did not want to get cut. And at the same time, I know that they were trying to make their medical decisions as soon as possible. It was like them against me and the baby, you know. So I just knew on that last push, like, the baby's gonna come out, like, this is it. And I remember like some, yeah, rustling where it was like, oh, like we have her heartbeat, but what about like the baby's? And I was just like, wait, what do you mean? Like, I need to know if this baby is breathing or not. So sure enough, on that next contraction, push the baby out. Out comes the baby. My husband catches her. I believe I want to say he quickly cut the umbilical cord. They put her on me, but at that point, she just looked like blue and purple. I just remember she was kind of limp, and they couldn't really like, I think they were trying to like rub her, and they couldn't get her cry out. And I was like, why is there no cry? Why is there no cry? Like, what's going on? And she doesn't look good. And all of a sudden, it must have been 5 to 10 people just come rushing in the room, and they take the baby away from me. I didn't even get to hold her. I didn't get to put her up here. She was just literally like down by my stomach. They take her. My husband is over there. He's reassuring me like it's okay. Unfortunately, my husband had to like see everything that they did to her, and so, you know, that must be even more traumatic, I feel like, because he saw everything. Whew, okay. I didn't think I was gonna cry. We've just relived this story so many times, so okay, I need a second. Okay, I think I got myself together. So yeah, so I think that it was probably more traumatic for him in certain ways. As for me, I just kept praying and praying and praying as much as I could. And honestly, what was like a minute felt like an eternity, because she did start breathing right away. But that, you know, from the moment she came out and I saw her to the minute that those people came in, everything happened so fast. Between the pushing her out, the seeing if she had a heart rate or not, the we're gonna cut you, the contraction, the pushing her out, the cutting the umbilical cord, to the people coming in, to them being with her on that side, it just went so fast. But remembering her being over there and my husband being over there felt like forever. And I'm telling you, it was probably only like a minute or two. You know, I don't know if it was them. I don't know if it was me. at that point, like, a decision needed to be made, and baby just came out, and that was done. What was done was done. You know, some people may say like, oh, well, you can sue them because they weren't monitoring the baby's heart rate. But then again, I refused to be cut, and I knew that the baby was coming on that next push. You know, you as a mother, there's so much that you know and that you feel. Labor is so natural that you just know, like, this is how it's gonna go. And so for me, I just felt like what was going to happen happened, and who knows if they would have cut and the same thing would have happened. Like, we don't know either way. And so for me, I left it in God's hands. Yeah, that moment was just so fast. So then from the moment that my husband was there, he came back and he said, look, she's breathing, she's okay. She actually pulled out the tubes that they were trying to put down her throat. That shows you, like, my daughter's personality from the minute she was born, which was, like, amazing. I was already like, you are gonna be an assertive girl. Like, you know what you want, and you know what you don't want, and you don't want those tubes down your throat. So although it was very scary, we still had to find some light in it, because we've seen who she truly is since, like, the minute she was born, and she's just amazing. She's just amazing. Yeah, so unfortunately, I did not see her until 2 hours later. They had to do a lot of testing. So after that, they continued. I don't know if they started it at the hospital or if they did it once she arrived at the NICU, but they started a 72-hour cooling protocol, and it's a more recent thing that they've been doing with emergency deliveries. And it's if the baby has lost some oxygen, they cool their bodies to kind of restore, like, nerves and different things in the body. I can't give too much detail, but yeah, to restore nerves from the loss of oxygen has deemed to be very effective. And a lot of these babies have gone on to live completely normal lives. And so they did that. And I will make another video on our NICU experience to share with you all. But in the meantime, just sharing the post-labor. So they ended up sewing me up. I needed to use the restroom without the catheter for the first time. And so I had to do that, transferred me into another room. And I believe it was about 2 hours later, you know, they transferred me to the room, and it just dawned on me, like, oh my gosh, my baby is not next to me right now. And all I could do was cry. People would come in and talk about pumping and breastfeeding, and all I could do was cry. Then I would be fine, and then I would cry, and then I would be fine, and then I would cry. And I just wanted to see my baby. I was like, I don't care about all these things. I want to see my baby. I need to know that she's okay. And they brought her in later on. They called paramedics because at that point we were not at the location that had the level 5 NICU. And so they had to transport her. Can you imagine a few hours old baby being transferred to a completely different hospital without their parents? Like, that was, like, boggling my mind. But at that point, I just had to trust that they knew what they were doing. My husband has been in the medical field for many years, and so has his mother. And so, you know, living with and experiencing, like, being around medical people and working with, I mean, I felt helpless, but that was the only thing I could do at the time. And so they brought her over, and of course I was just bawling my eyes up. She was kind of like tied down because she kept on pulling the tubes. That was the only reason why. And she was so mad. Like, they were like, oh my gosh, you have such a fighter. You don't understand, like, you know, with the pulling of the tubes, and she was like not letting us do half of the things that we needed to. I thought that was kind of funny. I was like, yeah, you tell them, girl. You tell them what to do, what not to do. And it was still sad. I mean, just seeing her, I was happy, but I was sad at the same time. And when she left, I just bawled my eyes out, of course, again. My husband went that night to see her. He brought me some Chick-fil-A because that's what I wanted as my post-delivery meal. And I was just finally talking to my family, because it was a very hard thing to process, a very hard thing to text, a very hard thing to just call and say, like, you know, hey, we're okay, but this is what happened. So it was hard. It was just a very hard day, very hard week. And so I ended up, my husband went that night, and then I was dispatched the next day, and we went to see her immediately at the NICU. And that is where I'm gonna end my story. That way I can share with you our NICU experience. I will say it was just hard to leave the hospital without a baby. It was hard to hear all of the babies down the hall crying, even if it was 3 o'clock in the morning. I mean, we had a sound machine, so we couldn't really hear anything, but you know, occasionally here and there you can hear babies. And so that was very sad, and it was very sad to leave the hospital and come home empty-handed. Those were the most difficult things for me. So yeah, that is my traumatic birth story. My daughter has been seen by physical therapists, by neurologists, by everyone, and she is developing so well. She is literally like running now. She's running, she speaks Spanish and English. She has always loved to talk a lot, and she's just a healthy baby. I just pretty much took the year to soak it all in. Those first few months were still scary because, you know, you're questioning, like, is something wrong with my baby? Is she gonna be okay? Making sure that she's breathing, which I now know is completely normal for every parent to do. But because she went through what she went through, I feel like the first couple of months, I just watched her like a hawk. And on top of being a new mom, yes, now I know. And I just wanted to soak it all in, soak in that 1.5 years. Now she'll be 18 months next month, and she is doing great. We're just so happy to have her in our lives, and we're so thankful. And yeah, that is it for my story. I want to say thank you to you all for listening to my story. And if you have any questions or comments or anything you would like to share, please share it down below. And if you feel like you need like a little bit more support, or you don't feel comfortable leaving a comment in the space below, you can DM me on my Instagram, and I'm happy to just chat. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you later. Bye.